Hello and welcome to the Miserable Mets Fan podcast. I'm the Miserable Mets Fan. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. I'll place my socials here. I'm sorry that this episode was released late. When I first did the recording, it was after the Braves series, and I was editing it during the Pirates series. And while I was editing it, I realized that the last 10 minutes of the episode just weren't recording. And so I spent the time editing up to that point and adding references of what I was talking about, and I was adding clips to things I was referencing. And then I got to that point. It's where's the rest of the episode? And it was gone. So I'm sorry about that. I'm re-recording it now I'm recording it during game 2 of the Dodgers series. Before I was going to kind of be a lot more detail oriented, breaking it down game by game, but that takes way too long in terms of just notes and stuff. So I'm going to go kind of off the cuff and just kind of let it flow as what I was talking about. And I'm going to go from the beginning of the season to now. I'm going to try doing the best I can. But what a difference 2 weeks makes. That's kind of what the overall theme of the last time I was recording it. And that's still kind of true. Now I think it's 3 weeks. But regardless, the season has... I hate saying roller coaster because it's the opposite. The ups are the worst part of the roller coaster and the downs are the fun part. But it was true. It's a roller coaster of starting 0-5 and then the Rhys Hoskins thing. And then Tyrone Taylor hits the walk-off single. And, Tonkin gave up 5 runs the day before in extra innings, and then that just was a huge defeating blow. And then Tyrone Taylor gets the walk-off single to end the homestand, and that was a huge weight off the shoulder of this team. And they've just been on a cruise. Everything's just been clicking. And there are a few minor things here and there that just haven't been as working as well, but I mean, for the most part, those issues have been generally addressed when it comes to Stearns. I mean, Tonkin was DFA'd shortly after his bad outing and traded away for cash considerations. They brought him back and he gave up a run in this game. But regardless, though, it seemed like those that have had their bad moments haven't stayed on this team for that long, and those who've been doing well have stayed. And that's what you want throughout. That's kind of the message you want to send throughout the organization, because you don't really want someone who's looking on the outside wanting to come in and say it's not a good message to send. But after the Tiger series, they went Cincinnati, won 2 or 3 there. McNeil got a much-needed homer, I think the first game on Apple TV. Then game 2 was shaky. The bullpen kind of gave that up after, I think it was the 8th inning. Everything just kind of fell apart, and they kind of were pigeonholed in terms of the rotations. In terms of the bullpen usage the night before, that affected that game. And game 2 fell apart. And then game 3, I think I'm blanking on his name. Hunter Brown, I think. The Reds ace pitched, and I don't really remember much about that game. I'm going to skip that. But then I'm going to talk about the Atlanta series, because that's fun. And did Marte hit that out? Yes! Let's go, Marte. Hell yes. Marte hit the 3-run homer off Starling Brazier in his 4th RBI of the game. So it's good vibes. Good vibes are rolling today. But that game 1, Julio Teheran started. And when he gave up that 3-run homer to Ozuna, it felt like every other time they've gone into Atlanta, Like, I get that last stretch of games in 2022, all that nightmare is just one game to me. But when Ozuna hit the homer, I felt a similar feeling of just like, up, it's over, you know? But magically, they clawed their way back. I mean, Nimmo had 2 homers that game and 5 RBIs. DJ Stewart got his first hit of the year, and that was an important homer in the 8th inning, I think. And then Drew Smith came in, and the bases were loaded. Some of that was his fault because I think he walked 2 guys, but regardless, he got out of that unscathed or gave up 1 run. I forget which, but regardless, though, the lead was intact. And before that, before he even got out of the inning, there was the fly ball that he ran into the railing and like really bruised up his leg, and that thing was like swelled to like the size of like a baseball. And he was still able to pitch through it and got out of that. And then Jorge Lopez was called upon to get the save, and that was kind of scary. I mean, he gave up 1 run, and then he gave up that piss missile to Ozuna again. And again, the SNY cameras, like, they made that ball look like it was going a million feet, and then it was just, like, caught at the warning track by Tyrone Taylor. I think he did make a good catch on that, but regardless, though, that ball hit a lot further. And then there was the Game 3 was rained out, and then they had the next game that Thursday afternoon. And when talking about blowouts, my dad and we use this term called koala wop. It came when we went to a game where Johan Santana gave up like 8 runs in 1 1/3 innings. And we were just sitting in center field, and there's a guy that just goes, man, they're getting koala whopped. And then that's just, we use that every time a game like that happened. And maybe it was just me, but game 1 felt more satisfying. I mean, there was just winning those close games are a lot more impressive to me. Just because, I mean, for a game in April, that felt really like a playoff game. Like, there's just give it up to Braves fans for showing out to what was it, like a Monday or Tuesday night game and making that crowd feel electric. But regardless, one question that Luke Dolan 33 asked, which was the most impressive thing to come out of the Atlanta series. I think there was like 3 things you can kind of point to. The offense was kind of a question mark before that point because they didn't really get anything going during the Brewers and Tigers series, and I think the most runs they scored was like 4 or 5 in the Reds series. So the fact that they scored 9 runs and then they scored 16 the day after that was like remarkable in a sense. Or they scored, what was it? It was like 9 in the first, and then 5 in the second, and then 16 in the third, and there was like 29 total runs. Again, that's just an offensive explosion. You score 29 runs in any amount, 4, 5 games, that's still pretty impressive. So, and they didn't even do it in 4 or 5, they did it in 3. So regardless, very impressive. The next thing you can kind of point to was the bullpen. I mean, I mentioned Drew Smith coming in, getting out of that 8th inning. That was basically a save situation, even though the scorebooks won't consider it a save situation. It was, in terms of just how high leverage and the overall. And then Jorge Lopez came in as well. Already talked about that. And the third and final thing I want to point out that I think is the most important is the scrappiness. Like, when it came to a lot of the core from this current team was also on 22. And so what's similar about them was that there was always the don't count them out aspect of the team. And you saw that when I mean, there was the game in St. Louis when Arenado airmailed the ball in 22, and that led to the Mets taking the lead. There was the 7-run rally in the ninth to beat the Phillies, and then there was the Mark Canha game, and you can just kind of go on and on about the 22 Mets in terms of their late game heroics, and that that same sort of don't count them out, death by a thousand cuts, small ball hitting doubles and singles and getting your runs off that way, that applies to this team as well because they've been doing that as well. They have been hitting long balls. I mean, Nimmo and DJ Stewart and all those guys are hitting long balls. I mean, Marte just hit one a few minutes ago. And that sense of don't count them out goes a long way, especially throughout a whole 162 season. And it's a real club mindset. It's not just like you can't pin it on one person. It's a general collective vibe that every offensive player and the pitchers, to a sense, like, look, if I just keep on putting up zeros, there's a chance that we can come back and win this. And that sort of scrappiness is what I've been terming it as. It's infectious. It gets everyone involved. And that's what I think is the most impressive thing to come out of that Atlanta series. And let's go to next in the calendar was the Royals series. Royals were hot. They had a 7-game win streak heading into this series. Game 1 and 2 weren't really that impressive. I do want to point out Game 3 because Buto's pitching in the game. Well, he's not. He's been taken out, but he was in the game when this was recording. But regardless, Game 3, Buto earned his spot in the rotation, and that's, again, like what I mentioned earlier about like the guys that have proved that they are able to stay up here. I blanked on Buto even though it was right in front of me. I'm blanking again. Oh yeah, earning the spot in Buto, and he earned the spot after this outing against Cole Reagans. Reagans and the Mets sort of, they were putting Reagans in spots where they could have scored, and as much as like it was scrappy enough to get into 7 opportunities to leave runners in scoring position. The Mets were 0-7 at one point, and then part of that was a little self-inflicted. Also, shout out to MJ Melendez. He threw out, who was it? He threw out Marte at home in the 4th inning during that game. And that was a really impressive throw because Marte is pretty fast. He's not the fastest guy on the team or generally in the MLB, but he's known for his speed. And MJ Melendez threw a perfect throw to get him out. But that same sort of scrappiness kind of applied in this game because Harrison Bader had the go-ahead RBI in the 8th inning on a swinging bunt with the bases loaded. He beat out a single, and then Nimmo drew in a walk, the next batter, and then that was kind of it. That was the game. Diaz gave up a homer, which proved to be inconsequential in terms of the grand scheme of things, but shows how important that Nimmo RBI was. But scrappiness was important. That kind of showed in this game. And shout out to Harrison Bader. He's improved since that game. I mean, there was a lot of people, and myself included, that wanted Tyrone Taylor to start every day. But his offensive production has kicked up like dramatically, and now he's like a 300 hitter out of like the 9 hole. And he's been hitting righties pretty well. He still hits lefties better, but regardless, get a 300 average out of your 9 hole. Like, how can you hate that? So, props to Harrison Bader for picking up his slack. DJ Stewart, the same thing. He's been killing it. I mean, he had a homer in yesterday's game off Yamamoto, but that's a little ahead. Um, Even though Beatty's out in terms of recording this, he's day to day with a hamstring. I want to give props to him as well because, like, holy shit, like he picked up like dramatically in terms of his offensive production. I mean, righties, these stats are old, but since he's been out, they may be kind of updated or still up to date. Uh, 325 average, 386 on base, 330, 350 slugging. Sorry for taking so long. I'm dyslexic. 736 OPS, 44 plate appearances. I'll put that here. But he's been hitting similar between lefties and righties, and that's what you kind of like to see. You want to see him getting chances to face lefties every day because you get into a situation where if you don't play him every day with lefties, and you just kind of if you don't give him the opportunity to prove himself, then he can't prove himself. So having him be able to actually play against lefties and give you a reason, all right, if he doesn't hit him, then it's like, all right, then he can't hit him. But he has been, and that's been incredibly important. I mean, he was the solid 5-hole hitter, and he's going to be like a really good 6-hole hitter whenever JD Martinez comes back. But also regarding Bain, his defense has improved. I mean, last year he was dropping major league pop-ups, and I mean, it's fitting that the Dodgers are on because he had that pop-up that was like, it went up into like the lights, and then it came back down and dropped, and the runner from third scored, and I mean, he's not playing now, but he was making a ton of plays. I mean, the few that stand out to me are he had a throw. He almost threw out Adam Duvall when he hit a ball. I mean, I'm just trying to visualize it. If he's at third, he went to his left, fielded it, and while he was in foul territory, threw across the diamond. He was safe by a step, but he was only safe by a step because Alonso on the bag fielded it a little weirdly. He wasn't, if his foot was on the bag facing towards the throw, he would have gotten it. But he was like this weird back to the side, and he got it like that. And that wasn't as like, that would have gotten him if he had better footwork. And there was the liner that he grabbed. The Cunha hit like a solid liner, and he like leaped, jumped, and then caught it, and he did that weird squat smile thing. But like, he's showing his energy, and it's almost like he's allowed to be himself, and Mendoza's just allowing like the young guys to show emotion, and it's infectious. Again, like, a lot of this stuff is infectious towards all the veterans, you know? You do this, you play Major League Baseball for however many years, and then it just kind of becomes a job, and you don't have that same excitement as you once did. And here comes these young kids who are excited and showing their enthusiasm, and that just, it affects everything. And it's, I mean, I used the term infectious earlier when regarding to scrappiness, but it's infectious in towards of the veterans, because you get a little jaded, you know? You kind of go through the emotions. I mean, during my other recording, I was thinking of Nick Castellanos had a quote. It was either last year or 2 years ago, and Nick Castellanos had this quote about how, like, it's hard for guys to get enthused about a Tuesday game against the Marlins in May. That isn't what he exactly said, but that's kind of the emphasis of it. And being in the playoffs, it kind of gets your gears going and explains why the Phillies are able to kind of just turn it on in October and not during the regular season. I mean, they have a better record than the Mets as we're recording this, but the Mets have been doing really well, and I think they're like one game behind. Still too early to standings check, but it's the energy is infectious, and it just kind of goes to show that sometimes the guys that have been here a while are jaded, and that's kind of what I have to say about that. I'm not gonna talk about that. I had a little thing about what does Beatty's impact do, and Freeman kills the Mets. He's got a RBI single, 2-run score, 5-4 Dodgers. If Beatty's able to solidify the spot at third, what does that mean for Mauricio, and how does that affect everything else? I don't really think that's a question we really need to be asking now. I think that's maybe more of a ask that later in the season, maybe off season. That's a good question to ask. But the next question is from Spencer Rosen 7. Is the rotation really good, or is this a fluke? I think it's a little both. I mean, the rotation has been pitching really well. I need to check where their ERA ranks in terms of starting rotation. They were high up when I had the notes originally. I think they were like, my notes say it was 7th, but obviously that's changed drastically now, just in terms of all the other performances. But one thing that I do think they need to do, which it's easier said than done, is they need to go deeper into games. I mean, the bullpen's been dragged. I mean, a bunch of guys have been used, and Buto didn't go deep into this game, and who else didn't go? Who pitched yesterday? Mania didn't go that deep into yesterday's game, and you can just kind of like look through and just see like, oh, like I think Buto's the only pitcher to pitch like 6 innings this year, and he did it twice. I think the Kansas City game, and what was the other game? Did he pitch in Atlanta? He might have pitched in Atlanta or Pittsburgh, or against Pittsburgh, I should say. But regardless, I think he's the only pitcher to pitch 6 innings, and the rotation, I think, in order to prove that it is as elite as it is, they need to go deeper into games, because the bullpen can't continually to be like this and get the results. I mean, currently Drew Smith is already at 18 pitches this inning, and it's 3-2 count. I mean, Joe Kelly's pitching again, or is going to pitch again. Sorry, no, I'm just looking at what the SNY says. But in short, the rotation needs to go deeper into games in order to be as real as it can be. And we'll see how, whenever Kodai Senga comes back, hopefully he is able to provide some length in terms of the length in terms of innings pitched, but it also will help with the depth situation. The next question comes from my friend Eddie, who was the one that sort of got me back on the horse. I want to thank him for convincing me again to do this. Also, he released a new album of music. I'm going to put that up here, and the songs I like. So thank you, Eddie, and also listen to his music. And he asked, is the NL East a little weaker this year than expected so far? Again, like, I feel like I'm sort of like a bitch for taking this 50-50 approach, but like, I think it sort of is. Like, Alonso gets, nice play by Alonso, diving stop to get out of the inning with the lead. I think that Atlanta's starting pitching is going to be somewhat of a question mark without Spencer Strider. Here's hoping he has a quick and speedy recovery from his torn UCL. But Ronaldo Lopez has looked really good. I mean, he was just a setup guy with whatever team's him and Giolito on were prior, but he was brought in to be a starter, and he's proved to be like the best starter on that team currently. Chris Sales also looked really good, but I'm not really surprised by that because of Bray's devil magic has turned him back into what he once was. Whenever he pitches against the Mets, he's gonna get like 10 Ks. It's ridiculous, but I think their rotation is going to be kind of a question mark. Um, I mean, like they had Winan. I mean, Max Fried hasn't had a good start to this season. Winans, who was the one who pitched the 16-4 game, he didn't look that great. Elder hasn't looked the same since like All Star break last year. Um, I'm blanking on the other starters that are sort of question marks, but their offense is going to continue to carry them, so I'm not as worried about them. Plus, I think they'll be able to they'll trade for someone. I think they're just going to trade for Ashburn. I think that's his name from the A's. He's had a really good start to his season, and like with Sean Murphy and Olson, they'll trade pennies for A's great players and then sign them to 13-year contracts at minimum wage. um, I'm not as worried about the Phillies. This just it is what it is in terms of them. Like what they are is just what they always are in terms of they're not as good in the regular season, and then they can turn it on in September and August or August and September and get hot for the playoffs. So I'm not really worried about them. I am. I really like how the Mets are playing now. I still think the starting pitching needs length in order to consistently be in games day after day. Sorry, I dozed off for a second while watching the Alonso dive to end the inning. And I don't know what the Marlins are doing as a team. I mean, before the season even started, I sort of had them as pretenders for the last wildcard spot. They had a lot of luck last year. I mean, a lot of things just kind of fell in their favor, and they had like a negative run differential for a playoff team, which is like really rare, I think. I'll see if I can find stats on that, but then they send down their best pitcher in Max Mayers to like start the season. That has like a bunch of starting pitching issue. I mean, Yuri Perez is out for the year. He had a torn UCL, and Sandy Alcantara was out for the year, and he had his last year, and I think it was going to be out again. Not again, but he's going to be out for this year. And they're sending down their best guys and calling up other guys. It's like, what are you doing? And they didn't really address too many issues in the off season. They didn't like sign a Soler replacement. It seemed like they might have been a fit for JD Martinez, especially since his price went down and they needed someone to be that power bat DH that the whole Soler left. And then now they're playing Avisail Garcia every day, and he's been a complete bum. And I mean, their season's over. Like, I really hate to say it, but I think the Marlins season's already over. I mean, I hope it's not. Like, I follow a few Marlins fans on Twitter. They're pretty nice. So, like, I hope that they have a reason to go to the ballpark and watch games every day. But I'm sorry, Marlins fans, that this is how your season started. But they also had a similar start to their season as the Mets did. I mean, even though their losing streak extended from 9 games, and the Mets was only 5, but they both got off to terrible starts. And the vibes around both those teams have completely changed. I mean, it's been weeks since both of those teams had their losing streaks, but it just goes to show clubhouse effect. Also, while I'm on the Marlins, they voided Skip Shoemaker's option for next year. Like, if what's the point of that? I mean, I get why you may not want to bring him back, but like, couldn't you void the option at the end of the year? You know, like if you weren't going to bring him back anyways, and then they're just going to bring in someone else who I don't think is going to be as good as Skip. And Skip was the NL Manager of the Year last year, and he's going to get fired right away, and he's probably going to be one of the top coaching candidates for managers. I mean, I can't really think of. It's too early to say now in terms of the other options. Um, that's second and third, one out, 5-4. They just grounded out. Last question I'll answer is from Sonsky, SOWNSKY. Am I allowed to be happy? And my thing is, of course. I got some variation of this question last time I recorded the episode, but like, enjoy the wins when they come. Maybe this will be another 2022 thing where all the bats go cold at the same time, and then the pitching also doesn't happen. Then they go on a big losing streak, like they did in September and that dreaded Atlanta series. Here's hoping. Sorry, superstitious. Knock on wood. That it doesn't happen again. But enjoy these wins. You know, like I took solace. Not solace. Poor choice of words. I enjoyed the that game one when they went down by 4 versus Atlanta. Like I enjoy that win for days. I'm still thinking about it. They won that game, and I enjoy that. And so enjoy the moments while they come. Um, um, Here's my socials, and thanks Eddie and for getting me back into this. And be sure to like, share, subscribe. There are my socials, and yeah, that's it. Thank you.